Okay, what you're about to see is a short presentation about administry, is what we call it. It's actually about admin things that the deputy and or wing chaplain need to know a lot about. Normally, IMSC and the experts from the Pentagon would come and teach this. This is used as a resource when they're not able to come or we're not able to get them in on Zoom or another thing. I'm Chaplain Klodnicki, and I'll be walking you through some of these things. I don't want to kill you by PowerPoint, but I'm about to, and I'm not going to read the slides to you, but with the medium that we're using, this is what we have to work with. As deputies or wing chaplains, would it be either one, I guess? We have students here in the class as well. As deputy, you're going to sometimes sit in the wing chaplain seat, and you're going to be responsible for admin, and you're going to be responsible for reports, and you're going to be responsible to things to the MAGCOM and to the wing, both chapel MAGCOM people and ACC or whoever your main MAGCOM is. So hopefully this will be of value to you. Please don't just turn it on and go eat pizza or something. Pause it, then go get your pizza, and at least have it on in the background so you can hear me talking. All right, administry. Currently, our chief of chaplains at the time of this filming is Chaplain Scheich. And he's asked us to focus on the 5 R's. I'm not going to read them to you. Hopefully you're very familiar with them. But the overarching R, as he said, is readiness. It's about inspiring readiness. And we need to do this paperwork in order to inspire readiness. Because if we're not doing the paperwork or if we're not doing the admin or administrative duties, we're going to miss a lot of the resources that we could get that would otherwise we wouldn't have. Okay. Of course, in a military briefing, and we don't like to call it briefing, I'd rather be teaching you, but it's a brief. We tell you what we're going to tell you, then we tell you what it told you. And so this is what I'm going to tell you. You can take a look at it. If any of these things are unfamiliar to you, by the end, they will be. Okay? We'll start with manpower. You have a UMD that you need to review quarterly as the leader. You might think as the deputy or as the wing chaplain, you just get to come to work and fill out OPRs and decks and still visit and do other things. You have that, but there are other responsibilities that it's here that you're going to learn about that you're responsible for them. You're going to need to know your positions. This would include your job descriptions for your guys and gals. When you have a new chaplain coming in and you want to let them know what they need to do, you need to sit down and have that initial feedback with them. Well, you need to know what their position is, what their rank should be, what their job should be, what their requirements are for that kind of job, and so forth. All of these things are important. The red one is the one I just want to take a few minutes on. AFCARs. AFCARs, if it's still around while you're watching this, because it changes. It used to be a 1270. It's now the AFCARs, those of you who have been around. I believe Guard and Reserve use AFCARs as well. And all of you will use it when you're deployed and at active duty bases as well. It's a reporting system that documents some of the things you do. It was not made to be an accountability tool. It's not made so that at the end of the month your boss can look at you and say, you spent 40% of your time over here. You need to increase that. That's not what it was made for. It was made to determine manpower. It was made to give the chief of chaplains and all of our advocates at the Pentagon data to request more resources. Someone told me, actually it was a MAGCOM chaplain told me, you have 2 jobs as chief of chaplains. One is to protect the resources of the chapel corps, and the other is to get more. That's your job. And there's other things he does, of course, but that's what he was sharing with me. Okay, so manpower, if you don't justify what you need, they will not give you resources to sustain that or to increase it. And AFCARs allows you to do that. What happened when it initially came out is a lot of people thought AFCARs is this accountability tool and it's a competition, and they tried to guess what leadership wanted in AFCARs. I had some people tell me they fudged their numbers. They messed up the numbers a little bit to think, well, they want us to see how much we can do. And so they did a whole bunch, and they were counting things incorrectly to make it look like they had high numbers. Well, then the manpower study began, and they looked at the data, and because people were not honest in what they were doing, and you might have a small team doing amazing, lots of like 80-hour weeks, which is ridiculous, they said, well, you don't need more resources because apparently you're doing fine. And it backfired. And so Manpower had to come and teach us what the proper thing was. And that's what we're hoping you can do here. You need to be honest with your AFCARs. Brutally honest. Okay? If you're spending 40% of your time on paperwork or on something else other than what AFCARs is recording, then put it down. That's okay. That might be a signal to MAGCOM saying, hey, we're tasking our guys with too much, suspenses or whatever. I don't know. It can go lots of different ways. But IMSC and HAF, okay, Headquarters Air Force, they get the big data. Okay, now if you were a classroom in here, I would ask you and we'd chat a little bit about your experiences with AFCARs. We'd take probably 15, 20 minutes, but we skip that part because you can't talk back to me. So think then of some AFCARs experiences you had, good or bad. Okay, reflect on those a little bit. What were the best practices with them? Now, there aren't going to be any deliverables that I'm going to have from you. You might from other facilitators that help out and that might use these resources. But the AFCARs is an important tool. There's a couple ways you can use them. Let's say you do have in your AFCARs data that shows you had 40 counselings in a month. Okay? And that could be a lot or a little depending on the base you're at. And you go to mental health and you tell mental health, we had 40 counselings that you didn't have to take care of. We just want you to know that data. And if there's trends, because in AFCARs right now, currently, you can trend what the topics were. And if you're saying we had 40 and half of them were about suicide, mental health might want to get with you and some other organizations on base and do some suicide prevention things. That could tell them that. Or you could go to leadership. And if we had time, I would talk to you here about what are trends in each of your bases. And we'd spend probably 10 minutes talking about that, if not more. What are trends you've seen? What are trends that you see emerging, okay? And now let's say you see that in AFCARs and you say, wow, we've had domestic issues, family issues. All the chaplains across the board are having that. You can go to the base commander and say, sir, in a certain squadron, there's a lot of families having issues. And he might go, well, I don't know why. And they look into it. Maybe there's a high deployment. Maybe leadership is poor. Maybe there's other things going on. They're just tasking them. Or maybe the mission's just ticked up and it's going to be. But you can use that data for your base. If you want to use data on a grander scale, you need to get it from IMSC. Oops, sorry about that. These things are touchy, literally. All right. You have to go to them to get the data overall. Okay, you can't just collect data from multiple bases. You need to get it from them. They are the gatekeepers. They are the managers of that data. And they will get on you if you're late because they have deadlines too, so please get those in. Who runs AFCARs? We would talk about that. Some chaplains run it. Some RAs run it. Sometimes it's a team that does it. Sometimes they have a civilian that might do it. It just depends on who you have hired. I would recommend everybody get an opportunity to do it, so that you learn how. If you have an RA doing it, pair them up with a chaplain who's never done it before. If you have a chaplain running it, pair them up with an RA or another chaplain or something so that everybody at some point understands how this process works. Okay, we go. This slide, whoever's producing it might put the slide somewhere. The guys at the Pentagon really liked this slide. And let me share with you why. And they came and taught us this, and so I'm going to share with you what they said. This here is the requirement that Manpower, this purple area, that's what the UMD, the Unit Manning Document, requires that you have at your base to function. I mean, how many people plus how many XYZ plus how many whatever. Let me take a side note. Your Manpower document, we don't have okay, there should be a new one coming out. There was a study, it could be out yesterday, it could be out tomorrow, maybe in a month. When you're watching this, hopefully it has come out. If it hasn't, we're still on the old Manpower determinants. The way they determined manpower was how many services you had and how many buildings you had. That's how they determined, like attendance, that's how they determine how many chaplains you need. That's not what we do anymore. I mean, we do those things, but that's not a determinant. Now this Manpower study, because of your AFCARS data and other things, it's being revamped. Because before, let's say you were at Nellis, they would not count the 57th Wing, which was 3,500 people plus families. They just manned you for the 99th Air Base Wing. And so if you have tenant units or a Red Horse or other things out there, they weren't counting all of that because that's how the Manpower the document was set up. So they're updating that. Hopefully it is very soon. But this is what the requirement says. You need this many people. Authorized, okay? This is where HAF and MAGCOMs go, all right, we're going to authorize a few less, and they're going to take the risk, the word risk right there. We're going to take the risk because we're just going to authorize this many. I know the manpower document says we need this many, but we're going to authorize this. And then it comes over here, the personal manning roster, they're going to go, you know, we're going to assign this many. So we're going to put money to pay for this many people. Okay? You got that. There's those people. And then when you show up at your base, this is how many are actually available to work. Okay, that's how this works. They like this document because it helps you see why we might be short. It comes down to money, authorizations, and maybe this is way off. If this manpower study, the original one they're using or the most recent one, if it's wrong, you're going to come down here and it's going to be even more skewed than what you really need. Okay? So, and I hope you have copies of these slides, not just looking at the video or just on the video, but actually have this deck. And there might be updated decks. So as I'm talking about this, maybe another slide shows up with updated information, and we can pause this at any time and let the facilitator share at this time what's new. We can do that at any time, really. Just kind of put on, whoever's producing, just put the break, and go into that. Okay, review. Now, if you were here, we would have this little quiz. You'll see this quiz pop up on your screen. I'm not going to read it to you. You can go ahead and pause it, see if you can answer these questions. Please look at the prior slides to get the answers, okay? Okay, so pause the video if you want. Go get a drink. Hopefully you haven't fallen asleep. There you go. I don't have to go over that. Promotion board. This is next what we're going to talk about. IMSC, they don't do the promotion boards, but they deal with teaching about them, okay? We'll let this populate itself as we go. Approximately 150 days before the promotion board is when it starts. I will walk us through this one to give a little side notes. They announce the date. They select things. They go through all of this paperwork happens before they get to the actual promotion here. This is important. PRF to eligibles. Your PRF, you know why you have to have it sometimes 2 months in advance? Because they're preparing these to get ready for this little board. Now, if you ever get a chance to talk to someone who sat on a board, ask them. I would recommend at this point in the lesson, you bring in a SME or somebody else, have a little testimonial that you can put in the corner, pauses the video, and have them tell how a board works. I think that would be valuable. Right, you'd have a screen show up, it pauses, and we listen to Chaplain Thomas or Chaplain Frankie or someone else or Chaplain Harvell or someone who sat on a board and could tell us the process of how that goes, at least the experience for them. That's very valuable to do right here. And that's sometimes what we would do with the mentor. If we had the mentor here for this course, they would share that with us. But we don't have that, or maybe you already saw it, so good. Then they go through the board, and long story short, they look at all the PRFs, and they don't know how many they're going to pick. They just know they'll say there's 30 chaplains coming up for major. And they rack and stack you. And all these points and the magic algorithms or whatever. And then it comes up 30 to 1. 1 being, that's the beginning of the list. And they go, you know what, we're going to go up to 27. Cut right there. Everybody 27 and below, you're a major. The other 3, sorry, we'll get you next year. We'll look at your PRF again. Okay, that's kind of what happens in here. That's the long and short of it, all right? So then those names come down, but you don't find out yet, because then it goes Secretary of the Air Force, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and so forth, to the White House. Now, it's not just chaplains they're looking at. This promotion board, 2 weeks, includes chaplains, but they're also doing medical group, pilots, everybody. Okay, they're doing hundreds and hundreds of these. And so that's why they all go through, even general officers, like 1, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star things. And so that's why when you get down to here, there might be someone at the White House, and I was told by someone who sat on a board, they saw the name go through, got to the White House, not a chaplain, it was a line officer, and someone in the White House said, no, he will not be a 3-star, because they had issues or something. They knew something at the White House that was wise to not give them that rank and keep them in the House. So anyway, then it goes to the Senate, and this is when you start looking on MyPERS, right? So then the thing comes out, they list it, public release, field grade pin-on, and this is important, all right? Your pin-on does not end until, your board does not end until you physically pin on. So in my year group, there were 14 of us that were pinning on our next rank, and for number one guy, it's over in that first month when he got to pin on. And the next one, when she got to pin on, her board was over. So when I finally pin on, that's when my board is officially over, definition-wise. Okay? And then I would bring up the SME to talk again about promotion boards. And we're going to talk about PRFs here in a second as well, which is the document that you need to fill out to get promoted. In the past, it used to be a long, I don't even know how many bullets, maybe lots, that looked over your entire career. They have since limited it to 2. At the current time that we're filming this, I have not seen any of those PRFs that are 2-line. Mine was not in the 2-line one for Lieutenant Colonel. Mine was one of the 9 lines, or however many lines it was. And so mine, I won't see a 2-line. And so friends have, though. And they can put on them different things, right? They're going to put definitely promote. That does not guarantee you will get it. It's a good thing, but it still doesn't guarantee. Promote or do not promote this board. I thought that's nice. They've added that. This board. Not like forever. Okay? And you can go around the room and you could ask if any of you got a promote and didn't, or, and we talk about that. And so you know your experience up to this point, and that we talk about it. We're not going to do that here. Okay, the narrative is on potential. The purpose of a PRF, as you're doing this as deputies and things, the purpose of a PRF is that they are determining your potential. That's the key. And when you have young airmen that are working for you, when you're a deputy or you're a wing chaplain, that's how you want to write their OPR bullets. And that's how you want to write their push lines. What is their potential? If you're writing on RAs, they have a different type of writing style. This is an officer one. And so we'll cover the RAs in another lesson, but just know it's different. Don't just write an RA bullet like an OPR bullet or like a PRF bullet. You'll mess it up. It's just, you don't want to do that. Get some folks, talk to a chief, talk to a senior master sergeant, and someone who has experience in writing those. And probably in this class you'll have instruction as well. 2 lines, and so forth. Okay? There's no push, no job push. There are on your OPR bullets, but not on this one. All right, we're going to see some examples. Okay, again, I'm sorry, these slides are just like writing. They would bore me to death if I was watching this. Normally we'd have more discussions. So for the emphasis here, someone who's teaching it, you can have 3 of 30 captains or 1 of 1 majors. On the PRF, we're talking about the PRF, not the OPR. On the PRF, you cannot put down best chaplain ever, okay? It has to be one of these designated distinguishers, okay? You could be chaplains, something of something chaplains, but if you're the only one at the base, they're going to have to be creative if they want to give you a strat. And you can get 2 strats on the second line. If you don't have the first one, you don't get the second one. And we would pause here. And I'm going to go to this page really quick, and I'll come back to the other one. Yes. We want you to have a copy of this in front of you, okay, right now. So if you can pull it off Canvas or whatever you're pulling it off of, take a look at it. Mission description, title. Look at that little spot for promotion recommendation. Maybe they can highlight this. And this is all you get, 2 lines. All your other OPRs are underneath it, though. And after you've just listened to, hopefully, a SME talk about, a subject matter expert, talk about what it was like to be on a board, they're going to see this, and it's all computer. So they would see this and go, okay, and then they can go swipe, not on a screen this big, they have their own private screens. They can swipe or click back and forth and look at every OPR, every decoration. What's interesting is if you get onto My Vector, it has all your OPRs, and it has every promotion recommendation form you've ever had. That surprised me. It has the one from captain to major. It has 2 from captain to major because I had 2 years. You had the pre-look and then the look. It has both of them on there. And it has on there the strats that I got that show up that are on the promotion thing, which was interesting. But they have them, okay? And you can see those and see examples. And then down here, of course, they'll mark what they mark. You don't get a say, really, in this. The only thing input you have is that you perform well. and that you serve well. Let me go back to this a second. All right, you're not allowed to do this. Go ahead and read this to yourself for a second. Let the camera roll. I'll give you a minute. You can pause it if you want. Okay, they don't want you to speed. All right, if you're the CGO of the quarter and there are 50 possible CGOs, you cannot get a strat that says 1 of 50 CGOs because you got the CGO of the quarter. Unless it's the commander who rates all the CGOs and then says, that's what it is on your OPR, but that's different. Okay, it can't just be like that. And I think these are pretty self-explanatory. Okay, why? Why do we have a promotion recommendation form? Now the reason we go over this is because as deputies, usually from lieutenant to captain, it happens because you're still breathing, and then you get an email. Yay, you're captain, woohoo. Some of you might have a ceremony of sorts, but some don't. Reservists sometimes don't because it happens while they're gone, and the next time they show up, they're just a new rank. But from captain to major, it's very important. From major to lieutenant colonel, it's very important. And from lieutenant colonel to colonel, it's a different system, but these recommendation forms are important as well. Again, you can read these 3 things. You're grown men and women. You can read. That's why we do them. Okay, here are some examples. Whoever's doing the diagram or how they do this, we can have these go. Maybe they can make them come up like that. I can put my hand here. Maybe they can put it on top. I don't know. They got some cool abilities. These are examples of a PRF in the new form. All right, and you would have this in front of you. And you can see how you have 1 of 2, 2 of 10, dynamic leader, a must for lieutenant colonel. All right, and these are the top things that the person currently supervising you can say about you. All right, so does it matter who your boss is when your PRF comes up? Yeah, it does kind of. Does it matter how well they can write? It does, but this isn't the only thing. Remember, they have every single OPR that you've ever had and every award and everything underneath this. They don't just look at this and decide yay or nay. Well, I hope not. I haven't sat on a board yet. Other things, you can read through these, but these were given to us as examples of good PRF lines. Okay? Again, review, go ahead and take a look at this. Pause it if you would. If you can answer these, we appreciate you in your head answering them or however you're going to do it. Maybe on Canvas, they can go on and have to submit the answers to these questions on Canvas. That might be a good thing to do. So after each thing, you pause, go to your document, and then you upload the document with all of these questions and their answers afterward. Okay, easy. MICT. Normally right here, because we would have gone through a lot more discussion, I would take a break. I'd say take a 15-minute break, go get drinks, stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, bio break, whatever you got to do. And so I would recommend right here, pause the video, go take a break, get something to eat, come back and watch this later. Do something because you're going to get an overload of information, and it's just going to be too much. So I'll let you determine how long you want that break to be, and you come on in. All right, welcome back. MICT. I did look for a MICT symbol that looked like Batman, that looked kind of scary and ominous, so that's why I picked that. It is helping you do your inspections. That's what MICT is for. It's management, stands for management. You can all say it together at home. Internal Control Tool Set. We just call it MICT. You're all familiar with it. You're deputies. You better be very familiar with it, or wing chaplains. You'll have someone on your team, a chaplain. We had a chaplain at the base I was at because we had one RA, and it was the senior NCOIC, and he didn't have time to do that. So we had each chaplain had this. They are checking if you're following AFIs, okay? And we'll talk more about why those are important. You can look this over. Okay, every individual's, every person reports. Commander has his. Unit effectiveness, they come and check. Big Air Force has their checks. That's what this is saying. We're always looking. Now, we are big on checklists in the Air Force. Okay? In the Air Force, it's like, if the checklist says we can do it, we can do it. In the Army, I've heard it sometimes said, well, if it doesn't say we can't do it, we can do it. Right? It's a different mindset. And there's a reason for that. Think of all of our leaders. Many of our leaders in the Air Force fly airplanes. They live and literally die by checklists. It is hardwired into their system to be checklist oriented. That's who they are. They get in an airplane, checklist. You ever watch people PCS who are like pilots? It's a checklist. I mean, it's just, that's how it is. And so our leadership runs the Air Force through checklists, okay? And that's a good thing, and it works. And that's just our style, okay? Again, you can study this slide. I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but it is the process of a UEI. All right, that's not what this is going to be about. We're not going to go into, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff and other things like this. Study this when you find you have a UEI coming. Come back to this slide, pick it up and go, when is this happening? What do we need to do to get ready? It's a good resource, okay? Okay, I apologize, but I didn't make this with pictures. Normally I would make these slides with pictures and make them very minimal, and we would just talk about them. But since this is a video medium, I don't have that option. So we need to make these available to you. And I want you to know what they're going to say about you. When they come to do an inspection, they're going to say, you have strengths, we have RIAs, recommended improvement. So you need to know what those mean. Because if you say, we have a recommended improvement area, and you get all worried, you don't need to get worried. You want to get worried about these words, but we'll talk about those in a second. If it's a strength, it means you're doing, you can see what it says. This is good stuff. That means you guys, this is a strength. You guys are doing awesome. You're on top of it. You're a little ahead of the curve. Good, 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 good. And they're going to mark all of the stuff you do and don't do and put these words in there. All right? And the commanders know these words, and they are going to get your inspection. The commander will find out exactly what you're doing, and he knows what these words mean in his sleep or her sleep. All right? And so you better know what they mean. If he comes up to you and says, do you guys have a lot of strengths in your chapel organization? And you say, oh yeah, everything, yeah, we got a lot of strengths. I mean, he's just really good with people. And that's not what they're asking. Okay? They want to know, what are you doing that's over and above, beyond the standards in a quantifiable way? It's a different language. You need to know these, okay, as a deputy and a wing. Because if you go into getting ready for a UEI and you don't speak the right language, you may be communicating inappropriately and hurt yourself, okay? Because if you go out and say, well, you know, our church services, they're not our strength, right? That's just you saying, well, it's not our number one thing. But really, when the commander would go, oh, really, it's not your strength? You mean we're going to come up deficient? You guys are failing? You're not even meeting the standard? And you're like, no, that's not what I meant. So you need to know these words. Study these. Recommended improvement area. I'm just going to read part of it. I apologize. If they find that, you're not going to get documented. You're not going to get written up. But they're going to talk to you. They're recommending an improvement area. It'll be documented that it's a recommended improvement area, but it doesn't leave your house. Nobody else sees it. They just kind of leave you with a Post-it note, put it on your fridge, fix it by the time we come back. Okay? You can see that. Deficiency. These are bad. That's a nice way of saying bad. Okay? You don't want these at all. Minor, significant, critical. We don't want that one yet. Minor deficiency. Okay? You get to decide when that deficiency has been met. If it's minor. Minor deficiencies are okay. This is where they say, you know, you had some materials in your chapel that weren't reviewed by the wing chaplain. We asked him, hey, have you ever seen this? And he's like, no. That's a minor deficiency. That means you guys determine at the discretion of the unit when it's fixed. We're not going to come back and ask you, did you fix this? It's a minor deficiency. You can get away with a couple of those. That's just, we're human, okay? Significant deficiency. You don't want that one. All right, it occurred and it could have a negative impact. That's bad. What would mean? Now here we would talk about what those would be. So let's pause a second, the video, and ask and come up with what are some examples that you might see are significant deficiencies. And I would also, if you have on Canvas, and you can cut this out if you don't want to have it, have in there a UEI report on Canvas that they can open and flip through page by page and find minor deficiencies, find strengths, and you highlight them in the document. And then go to your small groups or talk with your other teammates and discuss why these were deficient at that chapel. And you'd be like, well, we do that. We'd get marked up for that, or something to make it a learning experience. So if you want to make notes on that, to have that available as well. Critical deficiency results in, or could result in, widespread negative mission impact or failure. You get these kind, the base commander's canceling leave, all right, until it's fixed, because they will come back. Sometimes with these, answerable through the commander and the MAGCOM until corrected, either of these two, they can say, yeah, you had too many of these, we're coming back in 90 days and we're doing the whole party again. We're going to do the rodeo over. And we're going to look at everything fresh, but you got 90 days because this was just unacceptable. Okay? And you're like, all right. Now, these things happen. Got it. The next slide is the worst thing you have happen. A repeat deficiency. Do not do that. As a deputy or as a wing chaplain, or whoever's watching this, when you get to a base, look at their most recent UEI. Look at what all their deficiencies are. Look at what whether they're minor, significant, or critical. Read them, study them, and then go see for yourself, is it fixed? Because it's going to be on you if it's not. And then it becomes a repeated deficiency. Doesn't matter if it was someone else's job to do. You're the leader. You're in charge. You find out when something bad happens at a base, the 1-star gets fired, not the airman who did it. It happens because they are ultimately responsible. There's one story I know of that a pretty mission critical thing happened, not during a UEI, but it was just a very poor event that happened. And it was a simple error by senior airman, something or other. I don't know how to use names. And it came back, and the 1-star who was in charge of the base at that time got fired. He had been there 1 month, but it happened under his watch during that month. Even though he probably didn't even have his household goods, you know. But it's important, and this lays on you, okay, as leadership. So repeat deficiency, yeah, just don't do that. That's kind of obvious. MICT. All right. MICT has a grading system. And at the end of these green slides, you're going to see a slide, and I'm going to tell you it's your gold. If anything on this entire slide deck is worth anything, it's this one slide I'm about to show you. So make sure you don't fast forward this part, or at least look at this slide when it comes up. You're going to get a grade, okay? The HC will not receive an individual grade. The chapel will not get one. You fall under who? And I would ask all of you, and I'll say, Wing Staff Agency, right? Wing Staff Agency, you fall under them. So does legal, so does SARC, so does everybody else in the Wing Staff Agency. You get outstanding. That's good. Okay, outstanding. Highly effective, effective, marginally effective, ineffective. Some people think, well, is highly effective better? No, outstanding is the highest. Sorry. That's the best one. And then so forth. And you'll get a grade. And Wing Staff Agency will get one. All right? And then they'll say, why did we get marginally effective? Then the commander goes and shows me why. And then if it is the chapel, your name's all over the page. And you will be standing before the commander showing him your plan on how to be better in 90 days because they're probably coming back. And you don't want to have a repeat deficiency. All right? So your job as a deputy and as a wing chaplain is a lot more than just signing OPRs and writing decks and still getting to do what chaplains do, which is what we love. There's a lot more to it. Okay, tier 0 through tier 3. When you look on MICT, it'll say 0, 1, 2, or 3, tier 3. Remember this, it's like, well, 0 is, you're not going to change it. It is way important, more than any of the others. 3, not so important, like when it comes to mission success, okay? Tier 0, your waiver authority is the White House. All right? If you look, there are a couple tier 0s and tier 1s on MICT. You would need to look currently. It changes monthly sometimes. They might add things to MICT. They might take things out of MICT. Because what they're doing, you're still responsible for every AFI. They have just taken, there's 8 right now, but there could be more. There was 98 at one time, and I remember I had to run it then. That was a joy. And then it went down to less, and then now it's down to 8 with like 20 subtopics under each one. So it's still quite a bit there. That's not all that you're responsible for. You're still responsible for every AFI, every DOTI, everything that affects the chapel. But the MICT, they've strategically picked items that they're going to track on this tool. And they'll track it at like 2 in the morning. I mean, not really like 2, but it could be. They could have their computer go in and go check their documents and everything of, Keesler Air Force Base. And in the morning, your wing chaplain or you gets an email saying, we did an inspection on your MICT. You're deficient. You're missing this, 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 and this. You're not in trouble. It's not official. It's just an official email saying you got to fix this. And then we're going to check on you. And it's kind of random is the way I've seen it. I'm sure there's some kind of algorithm that tells them when to check who, but we don't know what that is. They don't tell us. That takes away from the fun. So White House, Tier 0. Tier 1, again, MAGCOM is the only one that can waive it. All right, these kind of things. It puts airmen commanders in the U.S. Air Force strongly at risk. And I would say open up MICT right now. What are the zeros and what are the ones? I'm not going to tell you right now because they might change, because they might be taken on or off MICT. But look, open up your MICT right now. If you haven't got it, get a printout. Look at what they are. It's usually about children and money. All right, those are the ones that will, these kind of waivers. And you're very rarely going to see these ever waived, ever, okay? Non-compliance. Sound still going good? We're checking, okay. Tier 2, it may degrade. Tier 3, it may limit. And look at this, the wing can waive Tier 3 stuff. Now this might change even. They might even bring it down to a squadron commander level that can do waivers. And that might be the newest update. So please study what waiver ability is for each of these tiers. Look at your MICT. If you're like, our base can't do this, then go get it waived. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with asking for a waiver because mission doesn't allow it or your timing or whatever. But just make sure you do the paperwork and get it done correctly through the right waiver authority. Okay, that's what 0 through 3. Your WICT, okay? Your wing inspection team. You're going to have probably a member of your chapel team be one. Just know whoever you pick, during exercises, they're out of pocket. They're gone. And so pick someone who can be very, who's responsible and detailed, but also you're going to be missing a team member at the same time because they'll be gone during that time to meetings, preparation, and during the exercise, they will actually be going around studying other people's AFIs, seeing are they doing their job. And you'll get one coming to you. And they're going to look at your AFI. And they're going to go, is this chapel team doing what their AFI says? And they're not going to know your culture necessarily. They're not going to know, well, this is how we do it here. Or they're not going to know, well, that's an old AFI. It's being rewritten. We all understand. It doesn't matter. If it's in the AFI, and here's where I would pause and I'd ask, how many of you have OIs at your base? Local operating instructions, right? If you have those, you have to live or die by them if they still exist. Okay, make sure they're currently signed by the current leadership, meaning your wing chaplain and or anybody else that needs to sign it. But you are responsible. So if you have an old OI that says, our rules are this, this, and this, and the commander signed it, you have to live by it and do it. Even though the Air Force might not have done that for 10 years. If you have an old OI font out there, so deputies and wings, look and find out if you have any OIs. And if the wing chaplain deems it appropriate to trash them because they're outdated, just throw them away. Just get rid of them, okay? But if it's something you need to function better, then know what it is so that you can function by it. Now I would ask the class to pause, go find the OIs, look up any OIs, call someone at your base. What are the OIs you guys have? And then review them every time you get new leadership at the chapel, including yourself. Okay, let's go to this one. IMSC, they do assessments every 6 months. That's like that, but they call you ahead of time. They're going to notify you ahead of time. You get a 5-day window. They do an assessment. This is nice. They do an assessment like a real test. And they say, hey, we're coming back in 5 days to do the real test. And oh, by the way, here's a cheat sheet of if we did it today where you would fail. And they give it to you. They say, you got 5 days to fix it before we come do an assessment. Even though they've already done the assessment and they showed you where the deficiencies are. They're helping you. They just want us to be better. Now remember, I'd also say the guys who are running IMSC, they're chaplains and RAs just like you. They signed up to serve airmen, to love God, because they love people, they love taking care of people, they love helping people, and they got an assignment to be a data manager for 2 years. All right, and they're very good at it. But it's not what they signed up for. They know the career field, and they're sacrificed to do this job. All right, and so part of the process, and all MICT does this, not just the Chapel Corps, but they're good people, and they're not the bad guy. And that's what I'm trying to say. They're one of us. They give you a 5-day window. So you fix it, Then they check it on day 6, because day 5, remember, they check it again. You had 5 days to fix it. They check it, make a report, it goes to the MAGCOM. All right, and then the IG gets it, and the commander gets it, and everybody sees what's going on. And then we go back to those rankings that you get. There's really no reason you need to get a deficiency without proper justification. Because you might have a deficiency, and why? Well, our program's broken here. We don't have the support from X agency or X people on base to get what we need to get the job done. If you have that documented and you have an email train of it, yeah, you'll get written up and you'll be okay. Because you've done the homework and you've been trying. That's what they're looking for. Okay, and they are there to help you. You call them. There's really like 4 or 5 of them at a little cubicle, and they're all sitting together. I almost worked there, and then they changed my assignment. So I got to see this room. It's not even a room. It's a cubicle with 500 other cubicles. And they say they'll have their phones, right, around this table. And someone will answer the phone, the MICT thing, and they'll say, and someone will argue with them about something, saying, this isn't fair, da-da-da. They don't make decisions. They manage and push numbers and data. That's all they do. They're not decision makers. And so, well, they do write the AFIs, but that's according to leadership. So they do that, and the person hangs up on them. And there's 5 or 6 of them sitting there going, wow. And they all heard the phone call. And so the person says, I'm calling somebody else. So they call a different number at IMSC. Guess which phone rings? That one right there. And their buddy picks up the phone. Hi, I got a question about IMSC. And he had just heard the conversation you had with the other person. They're just chaplains and RAs trying to do this job. And so be very kind, okay? When you call them, be nice to them. They are there to help, even though they might be the bearer of bad news sometimes, if your team is failing or deficient in something. All right. This is the gold right here. All right, so hopefully whoever's developing this video, take this slide and go right up in front of me. You don't need to see me at all during this whole thing, actually. But this is the one, and I will walk you through this. This is the only one where I will do this step by step. This is gold. This is their grading sheet. This is like getting the answers to the final exam before the teacher gives you the test. And it's legal. They gave it to us. Okay, currently, these are the items, the 8 ones. They could be different. By the time you're watching this, there could be more, there could be less, they could be named different things, but for our purposes, this is what they're using right now. Your resource personnel section of MICT, if everything's in order, you get 2 points, right? That's signed PAs, APF, statements of work, all of that is in good shape. You get 2 points. Yeah, 2 points. All right. Memorandums of agreement for your lay organizations, right? Maybe you don't have a rabbi, so you have a Jewish lay leader that comes on for your group. These agreements, right? They're all in order. You get a point for that. Your AMP, is it coordinated correctly? We're going to talk about that in a minute. 1 point, if your AMP is correct and uploaded correctly. Privileged communication document signed by the wing chaplain, right? 1 point. Background checks, okay? The bane of existence. We want to do them to protect the children. Got it. And we will. It's just a process that's continually fluid. And you got to be on it all the time or it's a monster that'll chew you up. If it's all in order, 3 points. That's how important this is, okay? CTOF point, CTOF contracts, and so forth. Now, here's the gold with this little section right here. Total points, if you get 100, you get 11 points. If you got all the points available. 11, this is just to them. They will never tell you what points you get. This is like their internal thing. They gave us the slide and we taught it, okay? If you have less than 5 points, boots on the ground, okay? That's what BOG is. They're going to show up at your door. Guess what? We're spending a week with y'all. I brought my team of 4, and we're going to look through every nook and cranny of your paperwork and your admin. Because obviously, if you're only getting 5 points, and we're only looking at a snippet of what we're tracking, because MICT is not everything that you're responsible for. But we're just looking at this, and you only got 5 points, there's bigger problems at this chapel right now. Okay? 6 to 7 points, they're going to recommend boots on the ground. 8 to 9 points, they're going to recommend boots on the ground if 1.3, your AMP, 1.5, background checks, and or 2.2, CTOF contracts are off track. So let's say you have 8 and 9, but 1.3, 1.5, and 2.2 aren't the reasons you lost those points. They're going to go, they're going to take care of this. We got this. But if those are, they're like, we're showing up. And they're going to get plane tickets, and they're going to walk into your building. 10 to 11, boots not recommended. All right, we're good. If you got 10 to 11 points, you're good to go. Okay, save that slide. Teach your teams this. Teach them why it's important. And remember, MICT is not the end all. I've had people I've talked to, wings, their MICT was beautiful, perfect. They didn't even read the other AFIs, the younger airmen. The leadership did, and they kind of took care of things, but they thought that was it. Hey, if we're good here, we're good for the Air Force. It's like, no, there's like AFI 101, 102, 5. You got all these other AFIs you got to be responsible for. Okay, keep that slide, learn it, and be real with it and be honest. Okay, let's go to the next one. Time for a review. Go ahead and look at these. Be able to answer them on your Canvas paper that you're going to turn in back to the course director. Okay, I would also here at this time say, we're going to take a break. Take 10, 15 minutes. I'd probably give them 15 minutes, get a coffee break, drink break, food break, whatever break, and walk around and come back in 15 minutes. That would give me a chance to kind of go, okay, get my head around the next few slides, because there's a lot of information here. It's important, but you got to get it. Or just pause your video and move on. All right. Okay, welcome back. Well, or not welcome back. Welcome, continuing. Ministry planning tools. You got some tools you're going to need to be very familiar with. You probably are. This is just a quick review. Airman ministry plan. It's not annual ministry plan. Airman. People call it annual, and officially it's airman because it's not annual. It could last for 2 years. It could last for 6 months, just depending on your leadership and the needs. And I would ask right here, what are some reasons you might have to change your airman ministry plan besides a new leader coming in? Think to yourself, right? Things like maybe your manning has changed. Your mission has changed. Your abilities, your resources, okay? All of that. Or just world events, perhaps. AFCARs and AFCOLs. We'll be covering these a little bit more in detail. What is AFCOLs? There, you can read it, okay? AFCARs provides them with data to make decisions. All right, and AFCOLs is another tool that's intertwined with the AFCARs data, part of the Manpower. Just be familiar with this. All right, we are level 2 of AFCOLs. So when they're determining where to put money, where to put resources, where to put, improvements, it's kind of sad. Level 4, greatly reduced standards, substandard, but still meets laws and operational mission. That'd be like the housing for Marines. Okay, nothing against any Marines in the house, but I've seen some of those bases, and it's greatly, but you know what? It's not against the law. We can still have you live there. Okay, so they mind that. Moderately reduced standards is level 3, and this is the tier thing they use. Chapel floats around level 2, right in here. So you might have an old chapel. You might have old resources. You might have things that just aren't the best and greatest. Maybe you came from an off-base ministry or a non-military ministry, and you had the latest and greatest, and you got all these great things you want to do, and we want to do them, but the AFCOLS levels and leadership will determine at what standard they think you can still get the job done. And whatever standard they give you, innovation, right? That's one of our catchphrases right now, which is a good one, so we do that. Why is AFCARS relevant? Make sure I said that word right. Okay? There's 2 capabilities that we have as chaplains. This is review. This should not be new to you. You look at the AFI, you advise leadership, and you do spiritual care. That's it. Those are our core capabilities. They might not be your competencies, but they are your core capabilities. You study out what those differences mean. And here are just some slides and just visuals of that. You advise leadership, you do spiritual care. All right, and you need to have the resources to do that. And AFCARS is going to measure that. And if you need more resources to get the job done, that's what AFCARS will do, is help you fight that battle to get more stuff. All right, again, a horrible typed slide. Take a look, okay? You do not have to report lower than the squadron level. So if you have different flights or different little groupings of people, you can do everything at the squadron level. One time, I had the 57th Wing at Nellis, and there were 30-something squadrons. There was no way I could visit every squadron and even see half the people in the wing. And I was the only chaplain for that wing. And so what I did is I went to the AFCARS guy and I said, hey, can I just have the 57th Wing as my only AFCAR, reporting level. And they said, sure. And so they put 57th wing. So everything I ever did was in one wing. It was really easy to take care of. That's not what they wanted. They came back a month and a half later, they caught that. And they said, no. You got to do it by squadron level. Not flight, but squadron. And that was the example there. I didn't have this lesson, obviously, before I did that. I wasn't a deputy yet either. Every 5th day of the month. This is more for your AFCARS person, but you need to know this as a deputy. You need to know this as the wing chaplain. Because if you're not on your AFCARS people, it will come back on you. And you need to train them appropriately. Green delta, data entry lag time, is still inspectable. That's the one where it says, you filled it in every 3 days, right? And if you didn't get it every 3 days, it goes red. That, I believe, is in flux right now. It might not be the case, but it's still inspectable, even though they might not track it, like, officially, okay? And you can read this, okay? This is what we talked about. This last point we made before, only official AFCARS data comes from IMSC or headquarters, right? You don't give any out, and you can do trends with your leadership. This is just a kind of a foot stomp on this. You can pull trends from your wing and squadrons and groups for your wing. But if you want something official that you're going to publish, that you're going to put out to the public, that you're going to share with non-military people like the city, you need to get it from IMSC is probably the place to go. You just call them up, ask them, and they'll get you the right permissions and the right data. All right, we're going to have a quick little review. That's a quick one. Go ahead and answer these questions and get ready for the next segment. Okay, Airman Ministry Plan. Not annual, Airman Ministry Plan. It's about the airmen, okay? This is a template which you should have on Canvas. All right, so it's another one we want to make sure is on there. IMSC gave us this template. Now, it's a template, okay? Now, as of today, this is what IMSC and the MAGCOMs prefer you use as your model. But whose program are religious services on base? The commander's program. Yes, it's the commander's program. Good job. If he or she wants this variated, like a different variation of this for his or her style or understanding, they're your boss. Okay? You might still get pushback from IMSC and MAGCOM, but remember, your base commander, he or she ultimately needs to sign off on this because it's their program. So be cognizant of that and have a good relationship with your MAGCOM and with the IMSC, because you will be in contact with them quite a bit, so that what you're giving back to them is the template they've provided, and if there are modifications, that it's very clear why. Not just because you feel it makes more sense another way, but really your leadership desires something, and they're more than willing to work through that. And they'll be your advocate as well. Okay? So go ahead and pull this out, and we're going to, I think this one would be good. And now we can just pause a second. You don't have to pause the video. But I would say as a note for this part, you may want to have this up and bring in a Zoom SME, a faculty member, for like 30 minutes to walk through what each thing means. Why? What's in this paragraph? How do you do this? What is this? What do these mean? And you've already done this a little bit. I know our enlisted team has done this. And go through this and just walk them through and talk about different lines. Make up your own. Make up one that would be universal, and talk to them about it. So, okay, back to the lesson. So now that you've had a chance to go through one of these, and if you haven't, please do. Pull yours out. We asked you to have them with you. You've probably supplied your amp on Canvas. So it should be in your files. The course director is probably going to want your latest amp. The latest one. We're not going to judge you on it, but we want you to use it as a reference, and you're going to share it with others possibly in a seminar group setting. Okay. The senior RST develops it in partnership with the rest of the team. You don't just tell them what you're going to do. Of course, be a leader. Lead them and have them some buy-in with that. You use these things. You need to know what your chaplain corps strategic priorities are. Do you know what they are? Okay? If you don't, pause the video and go find out. Because you cannot do this if you don't know these things. Do you know what your AFCOLs are? What are the priorities? Where are your resources already tapped to go? And if you say our number 4 is our number 1 resource, but the rest of the base is going, we're not going to fund that. We're not going to do that. All right? You need to support your commander's intent. What's your commander's intent? Have you talked to your commander? Has your leadership, have you looked at his Sometimes they have a document that will say what their mission, their vision, and everything for their mission is. Find out what that is, or just informally talk to them. What do they want? They might not want anything. They might say, chaplain, just do your thing. Or they might have very, very specific wants, needs, and preferences. Your job to know what those are. Okay? And of other things that are determined through needs assessments. Whether it's a survey or whether it's just word of mouth or however you do a needs assessment. You have a whole other course on how to do needs assessments. We're not going to cover that here. All right. Yep, make sure I got it right. All right, and now I'm going to skip through a lot of these next slides and pick maybe one thing per slide. There's a lot on them, so I'd recommend you look at them on your own a little bit slower than I'm going to look at them, okay? Your AMP, we'll just call that because that's what we call it. It's got to be realistic. It has to go to the MAGCOM first. You'll see this again. I'm going to say it twice, like in another slide. You make it, send it to your MAGCOM. They look at it, and they might push back and go, no, or they might say, looks good, whatever it is. You wait until you get the okay from them. Then you take it to your commander. And he or she are going to do whatever they want to it. They might go, yep, sounds great. Some I've seen just kind of pencil whip and go, yep, I trust you, chaplain. This is great. I know you're taking care of my airmen, whatever you need. And up because they've just got other mission things and you're low on that priority. Other commanders, they go through a fine-tooth comb and they're like, why are you spending this much on this kind of contract? Is that the cheapest you can get, or shouldn't you spend more on that kind of issue? Because that's really important. Why are you spending as much on this as you are on this? And they get into the weeds with you. And it can be a long process. All right? And they have, once they get it, they have 90 days to either sign it or send it back to you. So you go through this whole process. This could take a while. And that's why if you don't have one or you get a new leadership, you've got to get on that fast. Find out what their intent is and all that other stuff we talked about on the prior slide and get it to him or her. And then they validate it, and they still got 3 months once you give it to them to do anything with it. So technically, if you do all this in a month, which is pretty fast, and then you do this, you could be 4 months, you could be a quarter of your time into your time on that base before you even have an AMP. Unless there's an old one that you guys are floating on and the commander's fine with that, that's up to you too. IMSC will use it to look at their plans and how they disperse their money. Sometimes you'll hear of things called, the money's going to fall at a certain time. That's kind of a phrase you'll hear. Or they're dropping these funds, or these funds are coming available. And it's like when you have your Form 9s, for other little special projects or things. Well, they look at this too. And they see where your line is. If you go back here, there's a line here of where, so if the person can bring the thing up here, there's a line here where you say, this is everything we want to do. This is what we can afford, everything above the line. But if we had more money, we would do this too. Okay, and there's power in this. Let's pause a second. The good idea fairy is my friend to a fault. And this will keep the idea fairy from stealing resources from other events that the commander wants to have happen. If you have a brand new chaplain that comes into you, a captain, and she says, I got this great idea. We're going to do this for my squadron. I want to spend $5,000 and do this. And you're going, well, where is it on our AMP? And they go, well, it's not. Initially, you're going to have to go, well, if we do that, we're going to have to run it by the commander, or at least have some higher leadership, wing chaplain or somebody, justify taking something else off of here to do that. Or you have to go through the whole process again and throw that $5,000 project in there, which is okay to do if you really want to do that. It's up to you as leaders, okay, what the paperwork you want to do. And it's not bad. We do it. Just do it the right way. And so let's say that line is there, and let's say another way comes. The commander comes to you and says, Chaplain, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. You can get, sir, yes, we will do that, right? You always go yes if, not no why or whatever. You say yes, but please let us know what in here that you already approved for us to do you want us to cut. Because we only have the manpower, the money, time of the day, resources, everything to do what you told us right here. That's all we got. So if you want us to do this project, what would you like us? I can make recommendations, but do you have something that's okay to let drop? Otherwise, you'll burn your team out. Okay, so it's also a protection for you from the good idea fairy stealing all your resources, which are great ideas. Got to stick to it and upsetting the commander, and also the commander can then come to you and it protects you from the higher powers depleting your team's resources, okay? So we did that. Let's go back to where we were. Oh, yep, so they do that. So that's the plan. And when that money falls, they can look at your AMP. This is the other thing I was getting back to. They can look at your AMP, and if that money falls, they can go, well, look here, Fairchild Air Force Base has 7 events they really want to do if they only had $10,000. They already have it planned. They wanted to. Let's give them $10,000 and tell them, do those 7 activities. And you're like, thank you. And then you go do the 7 activities. And you know what? You don't have to run it by the commander because he or she has already approved you to do those activities if you had the money. Makes it very simple for approval, for getting funding flowing and money flowing, and everybody's happy. And then you can go back to your commander and say, look, we got more money and we're using it for your program, and then they're happy. Now I'm going to go through this. I'm not going to read these. I'm going to fly through these slides and stop in a second. 5205 is the money. That's the money AFI. Currently, while we're doing this, it's in flux. There have been some amendments given to it, but study that thing. Know what's APF and CTOF funded. Know that stuff really well. That's going to help you in your Airman Ministry plan. I'm just going to let you look at these slides on your own. Okay? FLEE, they came up with a neat acronym for it's teaching you basically how to write an AMP. Maybe you have your own style. If you're a wing chaplain or a deputy, you might have your own style of getting a team together and creating a game plan. Use it. Use what you got. If you don't have one, this is a great example, a great template to go by. I'm just going to flip through it. It starts with FLEE, right? Focus, leverage, execution, accountability. I'm not going to, you just look through this. I'm going to flip through them. You got focus, there you go. Leverage, there you go. Execution. Okay, this is how, now I'm getting to a part where I'm going to share with you. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, please read through these. Some things on the canvas might require you to read through these things, okay? And answer some questions later. And it talks about what part of the page it's on over here. All right, here's the important part. Yep, right here. Submit the AMP to the MAGCOM for a functional review. They're going to look at it and make sure, is this chapel stuff? Is this stuff we want? Are these events and these activities and the use of our resources something that we're approving the chapel to do? Does it meet the chapel core capabilities and all their criteria they're going to look at? If it's an event that's amazing that the airmen are going to love, but it's not something that should be sponsored by the chapel, they're going to push back, or for whatever other reason. Okay? Submit it to the commander after you get it back. We already talked about this. Remember, this is the second time I'm going through it. For approval. You upload it and they give you a date, and that can change, of course, depending on when you're writing it, but traditionally they want it by February 1st. And then you brief it to all your chaplain corps personnel. This is the last thing I'll have on this one. When you have any new member of the team, contractor, civilian, enlisted, officer, maybe someone on Protestant Advisory Committee or something like that, okay, or council, let them know what this is. Share it openly. Say, these are our goals, because you've already reviewed the AMP. You know what all these things are. Share those with them. Tell them where we're going. So when they say at an advisory council and they say, we got X, Y, and Z activities we want to do with the Protestant community, you're going to go, that's a great idea, but it doesn't fit right now. And then you might include them in your planning process. Maybe not there when you're doing your finalized thing, but include their inputs. But all of that has to happen. Make sure they're aware of it. Okay? And then, of course, you return it 30 days after. It's perform a functional review. After the commander sees it, it goes back to the MAGCOM, and then they get their official copy, and they upload it. If you want to see some, go on to the Air Force portal under the chaplain SharePoint page. Just put chaplain in the info thing, and it'll show you the SharePoint. And there's a thing called AMPs, Airman Ministry Plans, and they've got lots of bases they've uploaded their AMPs, and you can get ideas of what they're doing. Oh, if you have a one deep, okay, on your base, deputies, wing chaplains, and you have a one deep running around doing their thing, they're going to have their own AMP, okay? You maybe are going to help them write it, maybe counsel them, maybe look at it, give them some guidance, because they're going to have some training, but not as extensive as what you've had so far. Okay. The last thing here, monitor and improve it as needed. There's nothing that's in stone. It's just make it work. All right, if it's out of date, update it, do another one. If it's working great and the commander says, I want the same one I had as last year, then be like, good, you got it. and you run. But just know, whatever you sign into, those are the money amounts. Those are the events you're doing. And if you lose manning, you have someone deploy, someone gets sick, and someone fired, and you got 2 chaplains left on base, you're going to have to go to the commander and say, that line has to go up of what we can accomplish because we just don't have the manning to do everything. Let them know. Okay, review. Go ahead and answer these questions. Dun, 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 dun. Stay awake, everybody. We got you. All right, last thing is readiness. Okay. Readiness. What do you got to be ready for? That's a question I would ask if we had a full class here. I would ask you to think for a second, what do you have to be ready for? Things like counseling that might walk in, a deployment, family issues. As a deputy, you got to be ready for your wing chaplain to be out of pocket, and you got to step up into the seat. There's lots of things you have to be ready for. This one specifically, we're going to be talking about deployment readiness. Okay, and not like your CBRNE or self-aid buddy care class, but just other things that you are now responsible for as a deputy and or wing chaplain. Because just because you're a deputy, I'm going to treat you like wing chaplains, because if he or she's gone, you're in the seat. All right, this is what the Joint Operations says. You should have this entire JG 105 page in Canvas that they'll provide for you. Read through it. Here's just one excerpt, right? I'll read it. I hate reading things on slide, but I'll do it because it's a video. To accommodate religious needs, provide religious pastoral care, and advise commanders on the complexities of religion with regard to its personal and mission as appropriate. All right, that's your job. You read through that. You can talk about it separately. We won't go into great detail here. But you're advising commanders. These are in AFIs and joint guidance as well. All right, in our joint guidance, you have a UTC code. All right, this is like your code says what kind of deployer you are. Now, why do we deploy? Chaplains deploy to provide religious accommodation, advise commanders, and spiritual care. Remember the spiritual care and advise commanders? We deploy so we can do it with the airmen wherever they are. First, there's the ready available force, right? That's us. That's all of us when we're chaplains, okay, out at the wing. You are a ready available force, and so are our airmen. That means you're a body filling a spot in a place, okay, and you do your job there. Enabler force. Some people are enablers, meaning they're kind of always on the go to provide support 24/7 somewhere. Then you have in-place support. These are guys who aren't going to deploy traditionally, but they work at the air traffic controller, or they're a drone pilot, or something where they're in place. They don't leave the country necessarily, but they have to stay where they are to get the job done. And then there's an institutional force. That would be people working, we're filming this here at the schoolhouse at Maxwell Air Force Base. Anybody who works here or works at the Pentagon, they are staff jobs or part of those teams, and they are needed to keep training going. And so there's 4 groups, okay? And you're coded differently. Our code normally as chaplains is 52R3. While I'm here teaching, it's T52R3. It means I'm one of these guys. All right, it changes my thing. They can't deploy me as easy. It blocks me from certain types of activities or events. And others will open up opportunities depending on the code that you have. Okay? All right, whoever's making this, I'm going to talk to the video maker for a second. If you can highlight the things that are underlined. All right, so let's talk about the slide. The religious support team, if all of you watching the slide, just kind of cover up the XFF part. It's part of the code, but the only part we're going to talk about are these 2 letters at the end. Almost 100% of you are going to be CB, your religious support team. You were an RST in 03 to an 05. You're going to go out and do chaplain stuff, help people wherever they are. Okay, a senior religious support team would be in 05, maybe in 04. You're basically like going out as a wing chaplain. Okay, you're a little different. You're going out specifically to supervise CBs. Okay, this is just very basic. CD, and don't worry about remembering the actual codes, but as a deputy, you need to be aware that they're there. Because you're going to get reports. They're going to ask, who do you have, how many CBs do you have, how many CCs at your base? Or they might say, we're requiring a CC from your base for this deployment. And you might go, oh, that's great, a commander. No, that's not what that is. That means they're going to take your wing chaplain and senior RST, and they're gone. And guess who's now in charge? You, because you're the deputy. So if this comes down, that's going to change your life if you're a deputy. CD, this is basically 06s. These are like MAGCOM people that work at that higher 06 level out wherever in the world that they send us. Okay? These are the line remarks you can put. You might say, I need a CB, religious support team. And they can send you anybody, any religion, any rank within those parameters, right? Well, here's what they are. So in a line mark, you can say, I need a Catholic chaplain, or I need a Protestant chaplain, or whatever you might need. These are the codes that the commanders can put in their code when they're asking for their team. They're going to do this for public affairs. They're going to do it for doctors. They're going to do it for maintenance workers. They're going to have like this little code of what their team is made up of. Okay? So for example, if you have, if you want an RST to come on your base, on your deployment with you, let's say you want 2. I want 2 chaplains and 2 RAs. That commander is going to have to go, I have to take a code from another job of my team and give them yours. So maybe I'm going to have 2 less cops, but I'll have another chaplain and another RA. Or maybe I just want 1. And so they're going to have to figure all this out, and that's what these things are. It's a different world, but that's how they're making their teams up, and these are the codes they're using to get that. Okay? And then they can also put if they need a passport, weapons, rank, training, and so forth. This is the old ones. They really don't matter because they're like old. We don't use those anymore. This is an interesting slide. If you want, like let's say you're at LUD and you want another RST, we just don't have enough. However many you have is not enough. You make the request and it goes through this process. All over here to joint staff, and down, service providers, down to your, there's Chaplain Shike right there, yay. Then it comes down here, and it goes Air National Guard, regular Air Force, or Reserve Command. Who are we going to send? And so they go to the Guard, Reserve, Active Duty, and they do their deliberating however they figure it out, and they say, here's our 2 people. And they send those 2 back up. And they get reapproved again, and it comes down, and they tell them. The reason this is significant to know is let's say you're Guard or Reserve, or even Active Duty. And something happens where you're being sent to a specific location because they need extra manning, and you can't go. There's a process that has been going on before it got to you. And just because you're, I don't know, you wanted to be around for a wedding, or you wanted to be around for a special family vacation, and you're going to skip a deployment, and you can't get someone in the seat as fast as they wanted, you can see there's a lot more at play than just you just not going, okay? So that's just a different perspective. Okay, different types of readiness. Once you go to BCC, once you send your chaplains to BCC, they can be deployed. All right, that's where we have this, self-aid buddy care. This is the stuff we do regularly, the CBTs, that kind of stuff. Now this last one, when we got these slides, they briefed us on these, but I haven't heard anything lately. There might be more in the works. I will speak to them only because they're mentioned, but I don't have any more information on it at this time. Maybe the course director, there might be an amendment to this or a document that says what is happening. It's in the design phase. This will look like this little fieldcraft experience, okay? They're going to teach these things. Now the idea is, you know how we have the ready in time training where you're getting deployed, so you get the checklist and you go do all the training. Well, people like AFSOC and others, they're always training. They're like ready yesterday. Their training never comes due, ever, because they're always just training. It's just you always have to have it current and fresh. Not just current, but fresh. That's the idea that I understood behind this. They wanted there to be a continual refreshing of our skills and everything we bring to the fight that the Chapel Corps would supply. And that's all I have on that. Whether they keep it in the briefing or not, I don't know. That's up to course directors. They can do that. All right, your religious affairs airmen. Basically, don't let them get hired to do other things on base. Don't let the commander say, hey, You got a tech sergeant there. I need a tech sergeant to drive in my convoy. I'm taking your RA. You're driving in my convoy. Why do you think he says that? Remember the UTC codes? Right? As a UTC code, they belong to the commander. He's like one of their pawns or bishops or whatever on the chess piece. And he's going, yeah, I know this person's a knight, but I'm going to have them go over here and be a bishop now. And they can do that with their people. Not with you, but your RAs are vulnerable. So you got to be careful. It says you got to protect them. Okay? The AEF mission that they go on with you or your people that's primary. So here's the last bullet. This is all you need to remember. What do? Contact your MAGCOM. If they start stealing them to be a TCN or something else, they will contact IMSC and then they will give guidance. They might say, listen to the commander. Or they could go to bat for you and say, no, we're going to need to step in here and make some changes. Because they can't leave you alone. I mean, they can, but it's not preferable. They're a great part of our team. We need them. All right, currently, okay, not currently, but it's 2019. These are the stats. This is old slides. Just to give you an idea. At that time, during this cycle, October to March, we had 24 total people deployed from the Chapel Corps. That's total. Everybody, okay? Religious Affairs Airmen, we had this many, and you can see from which components. And the chaplains, we had that many. There's what, I don't know, at least currently there's 400 or 500 chaplains, right, and RAs in there. Well, that's how many are deployed. Guard, regular, and reserve. Then the differences down here. AOR support. Sometimes Roman Catholics are a little different because they might not go for a full 6 months. They might go for a month, do services, come back to their base station, go back. They have it's kind of a unique thing that you'll learn about the Roman Catholic contracts as well in this course later on if you haven't already. AOR support, you can kind of see where they are. Okay, just an idea. Again, this is from October to March of 19, old data, but just to give you a feel, you can look at this. These are the charts that they're looking at. From March 19 in the P5 now, they might be changed again. These things, they used to be called bands and they were buckets, now they're Ps. I don't know what they're going to call it tomorrow. But basically the time period when you're to deploy is what that is. Active duty, and you can see the percentages. Just take a look and you can see that this is how many physically and what percentage of that time period they represent. Okay, pretty simple. You can look at that and discuss that if you want, but it's really interesting. Trends, we don't really have enough data here to talk trends, but that's just a nice snapshot for you from a couple of years ago. All right, responsibilities. I'm going to let you read these. I'm not going to read them to you. They're all important. I am going to talk about what this is, the ART. Works with Unit Deployment Manager. Keep your ART current. Your ART is how many people you have ready to deploy at any given moment. That's the like second grade version of that. There's a lot more to it, but you got to keep it current. Deputies, you need to know this. Wing chaplains, if your ART is not current, you may get tagged with someone to deploy and that person's not able to go, and it messes up all that other stuff we saw. For example, maybe someone's pregnant. You need to put that in the ART. If they're pregnant, you don't want them to ask for a deployment. Let them know ahead of time. And the ART, I think that's on this next one. Yeah, just look at the top. It's got 2 acronyms in the acronym, all right? So it's an AEF, that's the A, UTC reporting tool. So it's like AEF UTC is the A. And then it's a reporting tool, the ART. It's letting them know who is ready. I know I'm foot stomping this, I'm probably killing it, and whatever. It's who's ready on your team to deploy and who's not. That's basically it. You'll learn more about it as you talk with your unit deployment manager, okay? And you're going to pick the UTC that people, and you can go through all of this. It's updated every month. Okay, changes got to be reported within 24 hours. If you got someone who broke their leg, you put that in there. They can't deploy right now. Pregnant, maybe they're getting disciplined. Maybe they're getting kicked out of the military. Maybe there's other reasons that only you and the wing chaplain are privy to. Those kind of things need to be reported, okay? Yes. When you get home, you as the deputy, okay, and the wing chaplain, make sure your people and yourselves included are being taken care of. There's lots of opportunities for chaplains to get care for the caregiver support. Look for conferences they can go to. Look for additional trainings. Like for readiness, maybe there's a TDY and you've put in your AMP money for personnel development. And not personnel, like your people. And you're going to send them to a TDY on some kind of lecture or to get some kind of certification. And also these kind of things, just for help, just for reintegration, or just to help the families get closer together because you know it's going to be really rough coming up and you want them to be solidified. Whatever you want to do. But these post-deployments is important, and we have these resources as well that we use, and we run some of these. Okay, review. Take a look at the questions. As you can look at that and answer those. And if you need to go back, please cheat. It's not cheating. Go back and look at the slides. All of these answers are on the slides. Okay, and please make sure they're in there and submit those into Canvas. Okay, this is what we talked about. If we had any other questions, hopefully we can answer them. If you have questions, please ask your course director in Canvas or in whatever medium you're using. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.